Today we're going to show you how to perform a dissection that exposes the spinal cord so you can access the cells in the spinal cord to record from them. So we're going to start off by paralyzing the fish. And to do that, we need to remove as much of the E3 solution as possible so that it doesn't dilute whatever paralyzing solution that you're using. And this can either be alpha-bungarotoxin or formamide. So we'll be using formamide for this dissection. Now, you don't need a lot of the solution, so just enough to cover the animal. So this is especially true for alpha-bungarotoxin because it's expensive and you don't want to use too much of it, that it goes to waste.
Yeah, and for alpha-bungarotoxin, sometimes we even reuse it. So after we paralyze one fish, we'll suck up the bungarotoxin solution and then reuse it for our next preparation.
So what you want to do is you want to mess around with the fish a bit and make sure that it's fully submerged in the solution so that it actually paralyzes.
Yeah, and also by lightly touching the fish with your forceps, it will create some cracks on its skin and it will make the paralyzing process faster.
Yeah, so we usually let them stay in the formamide for around 3 minutes, but it's really up to the fish. Some fish take much longer, so you just need to keep an eye on the fish and see if it's still moving around, and tap the dish or tap the fish and see if it's fully paralyzed. You really want to get it to be almost completely fully paralyzed, because once you start patching and if it moves around, then you're going to lose the cell.
Yeah, but at the same time, you also don't want to leave it in either the bungarotoxin or formamide for too long, because the health condition for the fish will deteriorate.
Yeah, and it'll just die and you'll get nothing. And then once the fish is fully paralyzed, you want to remove the formamide and then give it a good rinse or two. I usually rinse it 3 times just to make sure that there's no residual formamide in your extracellular solution once you move it to your recording dish.
Yeah, you can rinse with either the E3 or extracellular solution.
So right now we're using the extracellular solution to rinse it out. So again, just put the extracellular solution in and then remove as much as possible, and then do this a couple times just to give it a good rinse.
Yeah, because you don't want any remaining bungarotoxin solution or formamide in your recording solution.
So after you've rinsed it, you can transfer it to your recording dish.
So this is a Silguard coated recording dish that we made, and you can see that there are 2 electrical wires that we embedded into the Silguard that we use to zap the fish to elicit swimming behaviors.
And what we want to do now is to pin the fish onto the Silguard dish so that it no longer moves around. Now, I found the best way to do this is to remove all of the solution or most of the solution so that the fish isn't floating and you can it's easier to pin down. And the way that I like to do it is 1 pin through the mouth of the fish and 1 pin through the very tip of the tail. And you can imagine if the fish was floating around, then it'd be pretty hard to actually pin it down, although Wei-Jing can do it pretty well.
So, I mean, you'll develop your own preference for the dissection. And we actually made another video showing you how to make the dissection tool and these pins for stabilizing the fish.
So here I'm adding some solution, and the fish is not where I want it to be, and I'm going to move the fish to where the stimulating electrode is. So here you can see pretty well where the stimulating electrodes are. Those two wires, those are the stimulating electrodes. And for this dissection, I am going to move the fish to the fish's tail to the stimulating electrode. And just repositioning the fish so that a good portion of the tail is in contact with the stimulating electrode. Now obviously you can flip it around so that the head of the fish is in contact with the stimulating electrode. It just depends on what kind of dissection you want to do. So in order to further stabilize the fish, we like to put 2 pins, one above the swim bladder and one above the anal pore. These pins are going through the notochord, and that's slightly below the spinal cord. Obviously you don't want to go through the spinal cord.
Yeah, and you'll see in the tool making videos that the size of the pins should match the size of the larval zebrafish. So while you go through the notochord, you don't damage other tissue.
The next step is to remove the skin of the animal. And we're going to use a dissection tool that looks sort of like a hook to do this.
So also, if you're using alpha-bungal toxin to paralyze the fish, removing the fish's skin will give you a better electrical signal.
Yeah, definitely. If you're using alpha-bungal toxin, then removing the skin is essential to getting a good ventral root recording. But because we're using formamide here, you don't necessarily need to remove the skin to get a good muscle signal. So what we like to do here is just start from one of the pins because there's already a wound there, and just slowly use your pick to peel back the skin. You want to do this without damaging the muscle underneath. If you damage the muscle, then it's harder to get a good signal from the muscle.
And also it will affect the general condition of the fish if you damage too much tissue.
So just take your time and carefully remove the skin, trying to damage as little tissue as possible. And then once you've peeled back the skin, you can use a fine forceps to get rid of the excess parts. Once you get really good at it, sometimes once you have a flap of skin, you can also use a forceps to just peel that flap back. But that also can damage the muscle underneath. So whichever way you decide to do it, just be careful that you don't damage the muscle underneath.
Yeah, so now we've exposed several muscle segments that we can further dissect the muscle away to expose the spinal cord.
So we're going to be using our dissection tool to remove the muscles in that segment that we want to expose. And sometimes it's hard to actually find the dissection tool underneath the microscope. And what I like to do is just move it back and forth a bit so that it comes into your field of view. So first, what we like to do is to break the muscle fibers first and then clean it out afterward. So we're using the point of the pick here to break the muscle fibers. What we're doing here is just going layer by layer through the muscle and breaking the muscle fibers.
Yeah, but be careful not to go too deep at once because you'll just accidentally damage the spinal cord.
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice because it's sometimes it's hard to see how deep you're going. So my tip is just to go one layer at a time. So what we're doing here is we're flipping the tool around, dissection tool around, so that the flat end contacts the spinal cord. That way there's much less risk of damaging the spinal cord. And I'm just sort of using it as a spade or a shovel to just sort of brush the muscle fibers that we've broken aside.
This movement needs to be really gentle, otherwise you would just damage the spinal cord, even if you don't directly like poke into it.
So when you focus down, you can see the spinal cord really clearly in that segment where we've removed the muscle. You sort of just want to focus up and down just to make sure that you've actually removed all of the muscle on top of the spinal cord. If you leave some muscle in there, then it's going to obstruct the path of your electrode.
What you can do is to just put the preparation under the microscope of the EFIS rig to check if it's clean enough, and if it's not, you can come back to the dissecting scope to clean the remaining muscle fibers.
So we've peeled back the skin to expose a few segments of the muscle, and then we've removed one segment of the muscle to expose the underlying spinal cord. And that's how you do a spinal cord dissection.